My wife's cheating with my brother, exposed family betrayal, assault, and a shocking court battle. I've been married to Molly for 4 years now, and we've been together for 6 in total. Up until about 2 months ago, I thought we had a pretty solid marriage. We fought sometimes, but nothing major. We had our routines. She'd come home from her job at the accounting firm around 6 most nights, and we'd have dinner and watch Netflix or whatever. Normal, boring married couple, stuff that I actually liked because it felt stable and comfortable. I thought she felt the same way. But then things started changing. At first, I told myself I was just being paranoid because that's what I do. Overthink everything. Molly always used to tease me about it in a loving way, calling me her little warrior and kissing my forehead when I'd get anxious about stupid stuff. But now, when I'd mention that something felt off, she'd just roll her eyes and tell me I was being dramatic. That hurt more than I expected it to because she'd never dismissed my feelings like that before. The changes started small. Like her working late, maybe once a week instead of never. She'd come home looking tired but also kind of energized, if that makes sense. Like she was physically tired but mentally more awake than she'd been in months. She started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, which was new because she used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter most of the time and wouldn't even look at it until the next morning. I remember the first time I really noticed something was wrong. She came home at almost 9 on a Tuesday, which was weird, because Tuesdays are usually slow days. When I asked her about it, she said they were working on some big client's books and it was all hands on deck. But here's the thing, she works for a small firm with like 6 people total, and I've met her coworkers at company parties and stuff. None of them seemed like the type to stay late, unless someone was literally holding a gun to their head. Especially not on a Tuesday. So, I asked her which client it was. And she got this look on her face like I'd caught her stealing cookies or something. Just for a split second, before she said it was some manufacturing company she'd never mentioned before. When I said, "Oh cool, what do they manufacture?" she just said equipment and immediately started asking me about my day and what I wanted for dinner tomorrow. Like she was trying to change the subject. That's when the little voice in my head started getting louder, the one that says, "Pay attention, something isn't right here." I tried to ignore it because I didn't want to be that husband who doesn't trust his wife. But the late nights kept happening more and more. She started taking calls in the other room and talking really quietly. And when I'd walk in, she'd quickly say, "Okay, talk to you later," and hang up. The phone thing really got to me because we'd always been pretty open about our phones. Not like we went through each other's stuff, but if hers was closer and mine was ringing, she'd answer it and vice versa. Suddenly, she was guarding that thing like it contained nuclear launch codes. She started taking it with her to shower, which was just weird. She'd sleep with it under her pillow instead of on the nightstand, like she had for literally years. Then there was the way she started looking at me. Or maybe I should say not looking at me, because she'd stare off into space during dinner. When I'd ask what she was thinking about, she'd just say, "Work stuff," or "Nothing important." But her eyes looked different, like she was seeing something I couldn't see. When she did focus on me, it was like she was trying to remember who I was, or something. The sex stopped too, which wasn't like her at all, because she'd always been the one with the higher drive between us. When I tried to initiate anything, she'd say she was too tired or stressed about work. I get that work stress is real, and I didn't want to pressure her, but it had been weeks. When I tried to talk to her about it, she acted like I was being unreasonable for even bringing it up. I started paying more attention to her schedule and realized the late nights weren't random at all. They were every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork, plus some random other days thrown in. I started noticing her leaving earlier in the mornings, claiming she wanted to get a jump on the day. But her work didn't even open until 9 a.m. and she was heading out by 7:30. That's when I decided to drive by her office one Thursday evening around 7. Just to see if there were actually other cars there. And guess what? The parking lot was completely empty, except for the security guard's car. No lights on in the building. Nothing. So either she was lying about working late, Or her entire office had decided to work in the dark, like some kind of vampire accounting firm. I sat in my car for like 20 minutes, trying to figure out what to do with this information. I felt sick to my stomach, because now I knew for sure she was lying to me, but I didn't know what she was actually doing. Part of me wanted to just drive home and pretend I'd never seen the empty parking lot, but I couldn't unsee what I knew. When she got home that night, around 9:30, I asked her how work was. She said, "Busy, as usual, really draining." I just nodded and replied, "That sucks," while my heart pounded because she was looking right at me and lying without even blinking. I realized I didn't know who this person was anymore. The one who could lie so easily to someone she claimed to love. I started checking her stories more carefully after that. Like when she said she was grabbing lunch with her coworker Jenny, I'd casually ask about it later. She'd give me details that didn't quite add up. She'd say they went to this Italian place, but then mentioned they had sushi. Or she'd say, Jenny was stressed about her divorce, but the last time she talked about Jenny, she was happily married. The breaking point came when I found the burner phone, and I'm still not sure if she wanted me to find it, or if she just got careless. It was a Tuesday night, and she'd come home late again, wearing that same tired but energized look. She went straight to the shower like she always did after her late nights. She left her purse on the kitchen counter, and her regular phone was charging on the table. Something made me look in her purse, even though I'd never done that before in our entire relationship. And there it was, a cheap little phone tucked into a side pocket. My hands were shaking as I opened it up and saw dozens of text messages. The contact was saved as I scrolled through some of the messages. And my whole world just collapsed right there in the kitchen, while I could hear the shower running upstairs. The messages were definitely sexual. Talking about meeting up and how they couldn't wait to see each other. They shared details about how amazing the previous night was and how they wished they could spend more time together. There were messages about sneaking around and being careful, making sure nobody found out. I kept scrolling and reading these messages between my wife and whoever M was. But here's the thing that really made me sick. Some of the messages referenced things that had happened at our house. Like M saying they loved the view from our bedroom window and how comfortable our couch was. So this person had been in my house, in my bed, probably while I was at work or elsewhere. Molly had brought them there, and they'd been laughing about it together. I took pictures of some of the messages with my own phone because I knew she'd deny everything if I confronted her without proof. Then I hid the burner phone somewhere in the house and just sat at the kitchen table, trying to process what I had discovered. The shower was still running, and I could hear her singing like she was happy. I wanted to throw up. When she came downstairs in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel, she kissed the top of my head like nothing had happened, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I just looked at her and said, "We need to talk." Her whole body went stiff, as if she knew exactly what this was about. I told her I found the phone and that I knew she was cheating. I wanted to know who M was and how long this had been going on. Instead of denying it, or crying, or apologizing any of the reactions I expected, she just got this cold look on her face and said it wasn't what I thought, and that I was jumping to conclusions. So I showed her the pictures I'd taken of the messages, and her face went white. But then, instead of feeling ashamed, she got angry and started yelling at me for going through her personal things and violating her privacy. And there I was, sitting there in disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you seriously mad at me right now for finding out you're cheating? Like I'm the one who did something wrong here?" She kept insisting that I wouldn't understand and that it wasn't that simple. There were things about our marriage that I just didn't see. I asked her what she meant by that, because I thought our marriage was fine until she started sneaking around. She said I was naive to think everything was okay and that she'd been unhappy for a long time, but didn't know how to tell me. What really angered me was how she seemed to justify her actions. Like being unhappy somehow gave her the right to cheat instead of talking to me about it, going to counseling, or just leaving if she felt that miserable. When I pointed this out, she rolled her eyes and claimed I wouldn't have listened anyway, which made me even angrier because she never even tried. I asked her again who M was, and she said it didn't matter and that it was over anyway. but I knew she was lying. Some of those messages were from that same day. I told her I wanted her to call this person right then and there, in front of me. That's when she really lost it, screaming about how controlling I was and how she felt suffocated in our marriage. I thought, okay, if you're suffocating, then why didn't you just leave? Why cheat and lie and bring someone else into our home? Instead of arguing, I asked her if she wanted a divorce because I wasn't going to stay married to someone who cheated on me and lied about it. She said maybe that would be best, then grabbed the burner phone and went upstairs. I could hear her talking to someone, but I couldn't make out the words. I sat there, thinking about how my marriage was ending, and how I'd have to tell people, deal with lawyers, and split up all our stuff. I felt empty, more than anything else. But then I got angry again, knowing she was upstairs talking to her affair partner while I was downstairs dealing with the aftermath of her choices. I realized I still didn't know who this person was, and for some reason, that drove me crazy. I felt like I deserved to know who had helped destroy my marriage. The thing was, I had this nagging feeling for weeks that something about the situation felt familiar. I had seen signs before, but couldn't quite place them. Some of the messages I read mentioned things that made me think this person knew me, or knew things about me, which was both creepy and confusing. When Molly came back downstairs, about an hour later, she said she was going to stay at her sister's for a few days while we figured things out. I said fine, because I needed space to think anyway. But as she was packing her bag, I asked her one more time who she was having an affair with. She just said it didn't matter and that I needed to let it go. But I couldn't let it go. After she left, I started going through everything more carefully, looking for clues about who M could be. I checked our credit card statements and found charges at restaurants on days when she claimed to be working late. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A receipt from a gift shop for a men's watch that cost $300, dated 2 weeks ago. Molly had never mentioned buying anyone a gift, and I started thinking about who she might be buying expensive gifts for. That's when I decided to set up a camera in our living room, one of those small ones you can hide anywhere. Because I had a feeling she might bring this person back to our house again, and I wanted to know who it was. I know that sounds crazy, but I felt like I was losing my mind not knowing and needed proof of her affair and what was happening in my own home. I didn't have to wait long because 5 days later, while I was at work, the camera picked up Molly coming home with someone. That night, when I watched the footage, I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was my brother, Marcus, my older brother, who I had looked up to my entire life, who was supposed to be one of my best friends, who had been in my wedding and given a speech about how happy he was that I found someone like Molly. I had to watch the footage 3 times before it really sank in, seeing them come into my house together, kiss in my living room, and then go upstairs to my bedroom. My brother, who I talked to at least twice a week and trusted with everything, was the one sleeping with my wife. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why some of those text messages referenced things about me and my schedule. Why Molly seemed to know exactly when I'd be gone, and why this person felt comfortable in my house. Marcus knew all my routines, knew when I worked late, knew when I went to the gym, knew everything about my life because I told him everything. I realized they'd probably been planning this for months, finding ways to be alone together. I thought about all the times Marcus had come over when Molly was home alone, all the times he'd offered to help her with things when I was busy. The worst part was remembering how supportive Marcus had been when I started having doubts about Molly's behavior, telling me I was probably overthinking things and that all marriages go through rough patches. He'd been gaslighting me while sleeping with my wife, making me feel crazy for noticing things that were actually happening. I spent the whole night just sitting in my living room, staring at the spot where I'd watched them kiss. I kept thinking about how they'd both looked at me during family dinners and holidays, knowing what they were doing behind my back. I thought about how they'd probably talked about me, maybe even laughed about how clueless I was. By morning, I decided I was going to confront both of them. I called Molly and told her she needed to come home because we needed to finish our conversation. I didn't mention that I knew about Marcus because I wanted to see if she'd finally tell me the truth. But I also texted Marcus and asked him to come over because I needed to talk to him about something important. Molly got there first, and she seemed nervous, asking why I'd insisted she come back, and if I'd been going through her stuff again. I just said I knew who M was, and I wanted her to admit it. She gave me that same cold look and said she wasn't going to play games with me. That's when Marcus showed up. I'll never forget the look on his face when he saw Molly there and realized something was wrong. He tried to act normal, asking what was going on and if everything was okay, but I could see the panic in his eyes. I looked at both of them standing in my living room and said, "I know you're sleeping together. I have proof, and I want both of you to confess or get out of my house right now." Molly started to say something, but Marcus cut her off, saying, "We should all calm down and talk about this like adults." That's when I lost it because he was still trying to manipulate me, even after being caught. Still trying to control the situation and make me feel like I was the one being unreasonable. I told him he was a piece of underscore for sleeping with my wife and that I never wanted to see either of them again. Marcus got this look on his face like I'd slapped him. And then he said I was being dramatic and that things weren't as simple as I was making them out to be. I said, "Oh, really? Please explain to me how sleeping with your brother's wife is complicated because I'm apparently too stupid to understand." That's when Molly jumped in and said they hadn't meant for it to happen and that they tried to stop, but they had feelings for each other that they couldn't control. I just started laughing because that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard, like they were victims of their own emotions instead of two adults who made choices. I told them both to get out, and Marcus said we needed to talk about this as a family. I shot back, "We're not family anymore. You made sure of that when you decided to underscore my wife." That's when he got aggressive, stepping closer to me and saying I needed to watch my mouth and show some respect. And I'm thinking, respect? You want me to show you respect after what you've done? I told him to get away from me before I did something we'd both regret. But instead of leaving, he got right in my face and said I was always such a drama queen, and that maybe, if I'd been a better husband, Molly wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. That's when he pushed me, and I stumbled backward into the coffee table. I pushed him back, and then Molly was yelling at both of us to stop. Marcus was saying I'd started it, and I was shouting, "Get the underscore out of my house." Marcus grabbed me by the shirt and shoved me against the wall. I could smell his cologne and see the watch Molly had bought him on his wrist. At that moment, something just snapped in me. I started fighting back, throwing punches and trying to get him off me. He was bigger than me, but I was angrier than I had ever been in my life. We ended up on the floor with him on top of me, hitting me in the face and ribs while Molly screamed at us to stop. I kept thinking, this is my brother, this person I loved and trusted, and he's beating me up in my own living room while my wife watches. The whole time he was hitting me, he was saying things like, "This is what you get for being such an underscore, and you brought this on yourself." I managed to get away from him and ran to the kitchen, where I grabbed a knife, not because I wanted to stab him, but because I wanted him to back off and leave me alone. When he saw the knife, he finally stopped advancing on me. But then he started saying I was crazy and dangerous, and that he was going to call the police on me. Here I was, standing there bleeding, and holding a knife in my own kitchen, while my cheating wife and brother acted like I was the problem. I realized how completely underscore up this whole situation had become, so I put the knife down and told them both to get out and never come back. I said I was filing for divorce and never wanted to see either of them again. Marcus said I was making a huge mistake and that family was more important than this. I replied, "You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy mine." They finally left, but not before Molly said she'd be back for her things, and that I better not do anything stupid. After they were gone, I just sat on my kitchen floor and cried because my marriage was over, and my relationship with my brother was over. I felt like my whole life had been a lie. I realized the camera had recorded everything, including Marcus assaulting me in my own home. In that moment, I decided that I was going to press charges. I know everyone thinks I should have just let it go and tried to work things out as a family. But I can't get past the fact that my own brother beat me up while defending his affair with my wife. When I told my parents what had happened, they said I was being vindictive and that I should think about forgiveness and moving forward as a family. But I don't want to forgive them. And I don't want to move forward like nothing happened, because something did happen, and it changed everything. I called the police, showed them the video of Marcus attacking me, and filed charges for assault. I also filed for divorce, and asked for everything I could get. I told Molly she could have her stuff, but I wanted her out of my life completely. Now, everyone in my family is mad at me for pressing charges, saying I'm tearing the family apart over something that can be worked through. My mum keeps calling, crying, and asking me to drop the charges and go to family therapy. But I don't want to sit in a room and talk about my feelings with the people who betrayed me. Marcus has been calling too, leaving messages saying he's sorry and that he wants to make things right. But I don't know how you make something like this right. How do you come back from sleeping with your brother's wife and then beating him up when he finds out? Molly keeps texting me, trying to explain her side of things, saying she never meant to hurt me and that she does love me. But she loves Marcus too and can't help how she feels. Every time I read those texts, I get angry all over again, because she's still not taking responsibility for what she did. She's still acting like this just happened to her, instead of something she chose. The court date is next month, and my lawyer says we have a strong case because of the video evidence. But my whole family is pressuring me to drop it and just move on. I keep wondering if I'm being an underscore for not just letting this go and trying to preserve what's left of my family relationships. So, I guess my question is, am I the underscore for pressing charges against my brother and refusing to work things out as a family? I honestly don't know anymore, because everyone I trust has been telling me I'm wrong. But something inside me says that what they did was unforgivable and that I deserve better than being expected to just get over it. Maybe I'm too close to the situation to see clearly. So I'm hoping strangers on the internet can give me some perspective. I'm looking for perspective on whether I'm handling this situation correctly or if I'm just being a vindictive person who can't let things go. Here's an update. First off, I didn't expect my post to blow up like this, but thank you to everyone who commented. Especially those who told me I'm not crazy for feeling like my whole world got turned upside down. Reading all your responses has helped me realize that I'm not overreacting and that what happened to me was seriously messed up. Even if my family doesn't want to admit it. A lot of people asked for updates. So here's what's happened since I posted. First, the harassment from my family has gotten worse, not better. My mum calls me every single day, crying and begging me to drop the charges, saying that Marcus has learned his lesson and that I'm destroying our family over something that can be fixed with time and forgiveness. And my dad, who I thought might understand better, told me yesterday that I'm being stubborn and prideful, and that real men don't call the police on their brothers over family disputes. He said I should have just beaten Marcus up and called it even. Like this is some kind of Old West movie where we settle things with our fists instead of, expecting people not to cheat with our wives and then assault us. My sister has been the worst, calling me selfish and saying that I'm putting my hurt feelings above the good of the whole family. She said Molly and Marcus are both sorry and that they're willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. And that I'm being unreasonable by not even listening to them. But the thing that really gets to me is that none of them seem to understand that this isn't just about hurt feelings or family drama. Marcus committed assault. There's video evidence of it. If he did this to a stranger on the street, everyone would expect him to face consequences. But because he's my brother, and because it happened during a family situation, suddenly I'm supposed to let it slide. The other thing is that people keep acting like Molly and Marcus just made a mistake. Like they tripped and fell into bed together by accident, but this was going on for months, probably longer, and they were planning, scheming, and lying to my face the whole time. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern of deliberate choices to hurt me and betray my trust. I've been staying at a hotel since the confrontation because I couldn't handle being in that house anymore, and Molly has been going there to get her stuff while I'm at work. My neighbor texted me yesterday to tell me she saw Marcus helping Molly move boxes. I just felt sick knowing that they're still together and probably talking about what a horrible person I am for not just accepting their relationship. The divorce is moving forward. And my lawyer says it should be pretty straightforward, since we don't have kids and most of our assets are in my name. Anyway, Molly hasn't contested anything yet, which makes me think she feels guilty. But it also makes me wonder if she's just eager to get it over with so she can be with Marcus without complications. The hardest part is how isolated I feel, because the people who are supposed to support me during the worst time of my life are instead pressuring me to forgive the people who hurt me. I keep second-guessing myself, wondering if maybe I'm being too stubborn or if I should just drop the charges and try to move on. But then I watch that video again, and I see Marcus hitting me in my own living room while Molly just stands there. I remember how scared I felt and how helpless I was, and I know I can't just pretend that didn't happen. He could have killed me if he'd hit me the wrong way, and he didn't stop until I got the knife. Which means he would have kept going if I hadn't defended myself. Some people in the comments asked about the burner phone and what happened with that. I turned it over to my lawyer as evidence for the divorce. My lawyer said some of the messages could be considered evidence of alienation of affection, which might help my case, but honestly, I don't even want to read them because I think they'll just hurt more. I also found out that Marcus has been telling people his side of the story, claiming that I attacked him first and that he was just defending himself. But the video clearly shows him pushing me first and then getting on top of me and hitting me repeatedly. So I don't know how he thinks that's going to work in court. The thing that's really messing with my head is how normal they both acted around me while this was going on. Like Marcus came to my birthday dinner 2 months ago and even gave me a card. I've been reflecting on how glad my brother was to have me in his life, while the whole time he was sleeping with my wife. Molly had planned our anniversary dinner, acting all romantic and loving, and then went to meet Marcus the next day. My cousin called me and mentioned that he had heard everything through the family grapevine. He said he had always thought something was off between Molly and Marcus, but didn't say anything because he wasn't sure. I'm just like, thanks for looking out for me, bro. Really appreciate you keeping your suspicions to yourself while I was being humiliated. The court date is in 3 weeks, and my lawyer says we're well prepared. But I'm nervous about seeing Marcus again and having to relive everything in front of a judge. A part of me just wants to get it over with, but another part wants him to face real consequences for what he did, not just a slap on the wrist. I've been going to therapy to help deal with everything, and my therapist says what I'm experiencing is normal, considering the level of betrayal I've suffered. She explained that families often pressure victims to forgive and move on because it's easier for them than dealing with the reality of what happened. But that doesn't mean I have to comply with their wishes. My therapist also pointed out that Marcus escalating to physical violence shows this isn't just about an affair. It's about someone willing to hurt me to protect his secret. When I think about it that way, it makes me feel more confident that I'm doing the right thing by pressing charges. I know this update is kind of all over the place, but my head is still spinning from everything that's happened. I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm hanging in there and that I'm not backing down. Even though it feels like the whole world is against me right now. The support from strangers on here has meant more to me than you know, because it's helped me realize that I'm not crazy and that I deserve better than what my family is trying to get me to accept. Thank you for that, and I'll update again after the court date to let you know how everything goes. Update 2. Well, the court hearing happened yesterday, and I'm still processing everything that went down. But I wanted to update you all since so many of you have been following this mess and offering support. Spoiler alert, it didn't go the way anyone in my family expected, and now they're even more pissed at me than before. First off, Marcus showed up with a lawyer, which I wasn't expecting. He'd been acting like this was no big deal, and that I'd dropped the charges before it went to court. But apparently, when he realized I was serious about going through with it, he decided to get professional help, probably because he finally watched the video his lawyer requested and realized how bad it looked. His lawyer tried to argue that it was a family dispute that got out of hand and that Marcus was defending himself after I pushed him first. But the video clearly shows that he escalated things and was the aggressor for most of the fight. You can literally see him, on top of me, hitting me repeatedly while I'm trying to get away, and the audio picks up him saying things like, "This is what you get," which doesn't exactly sound like self-defense. The prosecutor was actually really good, walking through the video step by step and pointing out each moment where Marcus had the chance to de-escalate or leave, but chose to continue the violence instead. She also highlighted that he's significantly bigger than me, and that the injuries I sustained were consistent with being beaten by a larger person, not with a mutual fight between equals. Marcus's lawyer also tried to bring up the affair, as if it somehow justified what happened, arguing that I was emotionally unstable and that Marcus was trying to calm me down when things got physical. But the judge shut that down quickly, stating that adultery isn't a crime, but assault is. And my emotional state didn't give Marcus the right to put his hands on me. The worst part was when Marcus got on the stand to testify because he basically threw Molly under the bus to try to save himself. He claimed that she had pursued him and that he tried to resist, but she kept pushing. He said he felt terrible about betraying me but didn't know how to handle the situation. Then he had the nerve to say he'd come to my house that day to confess everything and end the affair, but claimed I confronted them before he could explain and accused me of being unreasonable and threatening. That's complete nonsense, because I have text messages from Molly's burner phone clearly showing they were planning to meet up that same week. So clearly, ending the affair wasn't high on their priority list. But what really got to me was when he started crying on the stand, talking about how sorry he was and how he never meant for things to go so far. For just a moment, I felt bad for him because this is my brother, and I've never seen him cry before. But then I remembered him, on top of me, hitting me in my own house, and I got angry all over again. The judge found him guilty of simple assault and sentenced him to 6 months probation, anger management classes, and a restraining order that says he can't come within 500 feet of me or my property. He also has to pay a fine and court costs, and it's going to be on his record as a misdemeanor conviction, BAT. My family is absolutely furious about the restraining order because it means Marcus can't come to family gatherings if I'm there. My mum started crying in the courthouse, talking about how I'm splitting up the family and making it impossible for us to be together for holidays and birthdays. But honestly, I don't want to be around Marcus right now anyway. I don't understand why they think I should just get over being assaulted so that family dinners can go back to normal. Like, sorry mum, but I don't really feel like passing the mashed potatoes to the guy who beat me. You know the divorce is almost finalized too. And Molly didn't contest anything, which made the whole process pretty quick. She's moving in with Marcus, which I guess makes sense since they're apparently in love and can't help their feelings or whatever excuse they're using this week. She tried to talk to me outside the courthouse, saying she knew I probably hated her but that she hoped someday I could understand that she never meant to hurt me. I just looked at her and said, "You spent months lying to my face and bringing my brother into our bed. How exactly did you think that was going to end?" She started crying then and said she knew she'd handled things badly but that she really did love Marcus and that they were trying to build a life together. And I'm thinking, great, I'm so happy for you. Thanks for destroying my life so you could find your happiness with my brother. The thing that kills me is that everyone keeps talking about Marcus and Molly like they're some tragic love story. Like they're Romeo and Juliet. Instead of two people who chose to sneak around and lie and cheat, instead of handling their feelings like adults. And when I point out that they could have just told me they had feelings for each other before anything happened, everyone acts like I'm being naive about how love works. But I've been in love before. I fell in love with Molly, and I didn't handle it by lying and cheating and betraying someone else's trust. I broke up with my previous girlfriend, and then pursued Molly, honestly like a decent human being, because that's what you do when you have feelings for someone who isn't available. My dad called me last night and said I need to think about what's best for the family as a whole. Not just my own hurt feelings, and that holding grudges is only going to make everyone miserable. I said, "Dad, I'm not holding a grudge. I'm holding people accountable for their actions, and there's a difference, even if you don't want to see it. He said Marcus has learned his lesson and that the family needs to heal. But how exactly is the family supposed to heal when nobody wants to acknowledge what actually happened? They all keep talking about forgiveness and moving forward, but nobody has actually apologized for the right things or shown that they understand why what they did was so messed up. I've been thinking a lot about what my therapist said about boundaries and self-respect. I realize that if I just let this go and pretend everything is fine, I'm basically telling everyone that they can treat me however they want as long as they cry about it afterward. And I can't live like that, always wondering who's lying to me or what secrets people are keeping. The hardest part is that I really did love Marcus. He was one of my best friends, and I looked up to him my whole life. Losing that relationship hurts almost as much as losing my marriage. But I can't separate the person I thought he was from the person who is capable of doing what he did. I don't know how to get past that. Some people have asked me if I regret pressing charges or if I wish I'd handled things differently. And honestly, I don't know. Part of me wishes none of this had ever happened. I just want things to go back to the way they were before. But another part of me knows that the way things were built on lies anyway. At least now I know the truth about who these people really are. And I can make decisions based on reality instead of the fantasy I was living in, where my wife loved me and my brother had my back. It sucks that the truth is so ugly, but I'd rather know than spend the rest of my life being played for a fool. I'm planning to move to a different city next month for a fresh start. Somewhere none of them know where I am and where I can build a life that isn't haunted by all this mess. I also got a job offer from a company I interviewed with, and it pays better than what I'm making now. So at least something good is coming out of this chaos. My lease is up at the end of the month anyway, and I can't afford the house payment without Molly's income. So it makes sense to start over somewhere new. I'm actually kind of excited about it, even though it means leaving everything familiar behind. Because maybe that's what I need right now. I know my family thinks I'm running away, but I think I'm running towards something better, a life where people don't lie to me, betray me, and then expect me to be grateful for their apologies. And if that makes me the villain in their story, then I guess I can live with that. Thanks again to everyone who's been supportive through this whole nightmare. You've helped me stay sane when everyone else was trying to convince me I was crazy. I'll probably post one more update after I get settled in my new place, but for now, I'm just focusing on putting one foot in front of the other and getting through each day. Final update. So I've been in my new city for about 3 weeks now, and I figured I owed you all one last update since you've been following this train wreck from the beginning. A lot has happened since my last post, some good and some absolutely insane, and I'm still trying to process all of it. First, the good news. I love my new job and my new apartment, and being away from all the family drama has been exactly what I needed. I can actually sleep through the night now without having anxiety dreams about finding that burner phone or watching Marcus hit me. I'm starting to feel like myself again instead of just this angry, hurt person who couldn't think about anything else. The city is great too. It's bigger than where I used to live, and there's actually stuff to do here. I've met a few people through work who seem cool. It's weird being somewhere that nobody knows my story or looks at me with pity or judgment. I'm realizing how much I needed that fresh start. But the really crazy thing happened 2 weeks ago when Marcus showed up at my apartment building. I have no idea how he found out where I live, because I didn't tell anyone in my family my exact address. But there he was, standing in the lobby. When I got home from work, looking like he'd been waiting for a while. At first, I thought about calling the police because of the restraining order. But then I realized we were in a different state, so I wasn't sure if it applied. Honestly, I was curious about what he could possibly have to say that was worth driving hours to tell me. He looked terrible. When he saw me, he started talking really fast about how sorry he was, how he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, and how he needed me to forgive him so he could move on with his life. I just stood there listening to him ramble about how guilty he felt, how much he missed our relationship, and how he'd do anything to make things right between us. But the whole time he was talking, I kept waiting for him to actually acknowledge what he'd done wrong, Not just say he was sorry for hurting me, but explain that he understood why it was so messed up, but he never did. He just kept saying he was sorry, that he loved me, and that family was more important than anything else. When I asked him if he was still with Molly, he said yes, but that it wasn't about her. It was about us and our relationship as brothers. So I told him that there is no relationship anymore. He destroyed that when he chose to sleep with my wife. He got frustrated and said I was being stubborn and holding on to anger that was only hurting myself. He said Molly was miserable because she felt guilty about coming between us, but insisted they were both in therapy, trying to work through their issues. Everyone would be happier if I could just find a way to forgive them and move forward. But that's when I realized that even after everything that had happened, the court case, the restraining order, and me moving across the country to escape them, he still didn't understand what he had done to me. He thought this was about jealousy or hurt feelings, not about the complete destruction of trust and the violation of everything. I thought I knew about the people closest to me. I told him that I didn't care if Molly felt guilty, and I didn't care if they were in therapy, because none of that changed what they put me through or gave me any reason to believe they were different people now. I pointed out that showing up at my apartment after I had moved away to escape all of this was just another example of him not respecting my boundaries or caring about what I needed. He started getting angry, saying I was being unreasonable, and that I couldn't just cut off my entire family over one mistake. I replied, "One mistake? You had an affair with my wife for months. You lied to my face repeatedly. You made me feel like I was going crazy when I started noticing things, and then you physically attacked me when I found out. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of choices to hurt me and betray my trust." He insisted I was twisting things and making them sound worse than they were, claiming that if I really cared about family, I would find a way to work through this instead of running away like a child. That's when I told him to get the underscore out of my building and never contact me again, because I was done listening to him minimize what he had done and blame me for not getting over it fast enough. He left after that, but not before saying I would regret cutting everyone out of my life and that someday I'd realize family was all that mattered. I just watched him walk away, thinking that if this is what family looks like, then maybe I'm better off without it. The next day, my mum called me, sobbing, saying Marcus had told her about our conversation and that she couldn't believe I'd been so cruel to him while he was trying so hard to make things right. I reminded her, "Mum, he violated a restraining order to show up at my apartment uninvited, and then got angry when I didn't welcome him with open arms. How exactly is that trying to make things right?" She argued that the restraining order was just a legal thing and that it shouldn't apply to family members who love each other and want to reconcile. I had to explain to my own mother that restraining orders exist specifically to protect people from family members who won't respect their boundaries. Marcus, showing up at my home, was exactly the type of behavior the order was meant to prevent. But she kept insisting I was being too harsh and that Marcus was suffering too. She said I needed to think about forgiveness and healing instead of punishment and revenge. I was so tired of having the same conversation over and over again with people who refuse to understand that this isn't about revenge. It's about protecting myself from people who have shown they can't be trusted. Eventually, I had to block most of my family's phone numbers because they wouldn't stop calling and texting, trying to guilt me into reconciling with Marcus and Molly. It's sad because I do miss some of them, like my sister and my cousins, who didn't do anything wrong. But they're all so invested in keeping the family together that they can't see how toxic this whole situation has become. My therapist, whom I'm still seeing through video calls, says this is pretty common in families where there's been a major betrayal. Everyone wants things to go back to normal so badly that they pressure the victim to forgive and forget instead of dealing with the actual problems. She said, "The fact that Marcus tracked you down after you moved away shows that he's more interested in relieving his own guilt than respecting your need for space. I know some people probably think I'm being too extreme by cutting contact with my family, but I can't keep having the same arguments with people who think I should just get over being betrayed and assaulted, because it's inconvenient for them to deal with the consequences. Maybe someday things will be different, but for now, I'm happier than I've been in months. And I'm not going to apologize for choosing my own peace of mind over everyone else's comfort. I spent too many years putting other people's needs before my own, and now it's time to prioritize my well-being. Look where that got me, but that's exactly why things are different now. I'm finally living life on my own terms, and I'm not looking back. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I actually feel hopeful about the future. Thanks to everyone who supported me through this mess. You helped me stay strong when everyone else was trying to convince me I was wrong for standing up for myself.